Hello and welcome to That Bible Guy, where we answer your difficult questions on the Bible. Today we've got three questions really around the subject of prophecies. So questions I was asked at the end of a talk on what makes the Bible special, and some questions were asked and we just didn't get to all of them. So there was a few questions asked there, and I just wanted to deal with some of them today around the subject of prophecy. So the first one that was asked was, could Jesus have intentionally fulfilled the prophecies? Knowing that they were written about someone, he decided, I want to make sure these are fulfilled, and I'm going to make sure, do the things myself deliberately to fulfill the prophecy myself. Is that possible? Whilst you could argue that it could be possible for some of us to fulfill some prophecies, there are specific reasons why Jesus couldn't. Why could he not have fulfilled them? Well, intentionally? Well, because of the specific details in the prophecies. Prophecies that we're talking about is particularly Isaiah 53, Psalm 22, and there are specific reasons why Jesus could not have intentionally fulfilled these. Isaiah chapter 53 tells us in verse 5 that he was pierced for our transgressions. Pierced. We know from John 19, verses 33 to 34, it gives us the details of this particular event that were fulfilled. When they came to Jesus, John 19:33, when they came to Jesus and found that he was already dead, they did not break his legs. Instead, one of the soldiers pierced his side with a spear, bringing a sudden flow of blood and water. Did you notice there? After he had already died. This was fulfilled as predicted in Isaiah 53 verse 5, after Jesus died, so that they wouldn't break his legs. That's another fulfilled prophecy, but they pierced his side with a spear. So Jesus could not have arranged for this to happen. Jesus was rejected by all. Even his own followers abandoned him at this time, and that was also predicted in Isaiah 53. That's not something Jesus could have organized to happen after he had died or during the torture on the cross. The other details, Isaiah 53 verse 9 here, talks about assigned a grave with the wicked and with the rich in his death. Two things. Assigned a grave with the wicked. Well, his grave in a sense, where he died, was the cross. He was between two criminals on the cross, and he was assigned a grave with the wicked, was what people interpret that to mean. The other thing then, assigned a grave with the rich, was we know that Jesus' body, Joseph of Arimathea, a rich man, had went to Pilate and asked for the body and then buried the body in a plot that he had already purchased himself, which was essentially a rich man's grave burial plot. So we know that he was assigned a grave with the rich. So that was predicted. Again, that's outside Jesus' control. It happened after he died. And remember, if we're saying he fulfilled it intentionally, we're saying that he wasn't the Messiah. He wasn't God in the flesh. He was just an ordinary man. And therefore, he could not control these events. So clearly that's not. It was way too specific. First, Isaiah chapter 53 verse 7 says that he did not even open his mouth. He didn't retaliate. That's unthinkable for someone who's a normal man being tortured and abused innocently to then not open his mouth to defend himself against all the accusations and mockery is rather unthinkable also. So the other one from Psalm 22, verse 18, talks about Jesus' clothing being cast. Lots were cast for his clothing. Again, this was while he was suffering on the cross, and then after he had died, they cast lots for his clothing. Again, Jesus could not have fulfilled this as an ordinary man. There's no way he could have organized this to happen. So the idea that Jesus fulfilled it intentionally is preposterous. It's simply not possible. Why? Because the details are so specific. These prophecies are not like Nostradamus' quatrains that are vague and could be applied to any situation. No, they're very, very clear. Even the Jews recognize them as messianic prophecies, and therefore Jesus could not have fulfilled these intentionally. He simply could not have done this. They're way too specific. So that's the first question. The second question I'll deal with here that was also asked about prophecies was, how do we know the Bible wasn't edited after it happened? So Isaiah 53, Psalm 22, written before Jesus came. How do we know that whenever it did happen, that someone didn't go back and then edit Psalm 22 and Isaiah 53 and all the other, Daniel 9, the timetable of Messiah, Isaiah 7, all Zechariah, many, many other prophecies? How do we know they weren't edited afterwards to say what eventually happened? Well, thank goodness we have incredible discoveries. We know that the prophecies, and we'll come to that now, the prophecies in Isaiah 53 was written around about 700 years before Christ. Psalm 22 was written around about 600 years to 1,000 years before Christ, a bit of a wider span, but around 600 years before Christ. We know that they were written in these dates, around 700 BC for Isaiah, 587 roughly for Psalms. Some were saying, well, they were edited later on. How do we know that they weren't edited later on? Well, we know that the Dead Sea Scrolls were found in the cave in Qumran, and we know that the Dead Sea Scrolls were found, and the scroll of Isaiah was dated to around 100 to 300 BC. So that's 100 to 300 years before Christ came. That's the key bit. And the scroll of Isaiah was dated to around about 300 BC. Again, 300 years before Jesus came. So was it edited later? Well, no. These have been radiocarbon dated to within hundreds of years before Jesus was born. And what do they say? Exactly the same thing. The details are exactly the same as the older copies we have of Isaiah and Psalms, and simply could not have been edited later on, because we're confirming details and they've been dated to that particular time. They've lay there for hundreds of years, and they've been dated to hundreds of years before Jesus came. And that's the key bit, is it was hundreds of years before the crucifixion, before the events that have been prophesied about took place. We have this scrolls found in the middle somewhere to confirm the details. And again, there's some discoveries I was reading about last night, further possible discoveries around 2,000 years old of other parchments, but we'll talk about that again very soon. That's a potential exciting discovery. So they couldn't have been edited later. It simply is not possible thanks to archaeological discoveries. Amazing. Third question, why was the Bible not written in more clear language? Well, that's an interesting question. And let's be fair, many times it is very clear and specific. Isaiah 53, as I say, they're not like Nostradamus' quatrains, vague. They're very specific, very much about the suffering Messiah, details of where Jesus would be born, where he would live, and what would happen to him, how he'd be treated. Very specific details. Daniel 9, a specific dates of when he would come and be our king and die. Incredible. So they're very specific. There's no lack of clarity there. However, I agree, there are some prophecies that are less clear, and they are seemingly a little bit more vague. However, I want to just draw attention to something, and that is the idea that Jesus often spoke in parables. Because I believe the question was raised in Mark 4 and Matthew to Jesus about, why do you speak in parables? Well, I do believe that there's a similarity here between less specific prophecies, less clear, and also less clear potential teaching from Jesus. Why do you speak in parables? Why do you not speak more clearly? There is a specific reason for it. Jesus did say in Mark 4, verse 10, when they were around, they asked him about the parables. And Matthew says, why do you speak in parables? He told them, the secret of the kingdom of God has been given to you, but to those on the outside, everything is said in parables, so that they may be ever seeing, but never perceiving, and never hearing, but never understanding. Otherwise, they might turn and be forgiven. Jesus said he deliberately spoke in parables so that some would get it and some wouldn't. Why is that? Those who search will find. Those who dig deep and ask the questions will find the truth. And it's the same with prophecies. There are many clear ones, some less clear ones, a bit like Jesus' teaching. But if you want to find the truth in it, you can find it. All you have to do is dig a little bit. Does this surprise us? How do you get anything of value? How do you learn to play a new musical instrument? Hours and hours and hours of practice. How do you get good at a sporting event, or some sort of fitness skill? Hours and hours and hours of practice. How do you get that physique you always wanted? Hours and hours and hours of training. How do you find anything of value? Pearls, diamonds, oil, gold. All these things, you have to dig deep to find these things of value. Jesus' teachings were the same. Often they were very clear and were given to ordinary unschooled men, fishermen and farmers, with analogies about seeds to emphasize what the kingdom will be like. But occasionally Jesus took it deeper so that those who were searching would find it, but those who weren't interested, who had ulterior motives, who just couldn't be bothered looking for the truth, would not find it. There's enough clarity there for those who want to see, but enough obscurity for those who don't. So the truth is, Some of it's not as clear because it's there to see if you want to dig and find, as the way Jesus presented many of his teachings. So that's the answer to that. As I say, some of it's very clear, but some of it, like everything in life, we have to dig to find the truth. The question is, are we willing to dig to actually find the truth? If we do, there is nothing as rewarding as finding the deep truths of the kingdom of God. So this is a quick video today, just as I say, to clear up some questions on the prophecies. Again, first of all, could they have been fulfilled intentionally? No, they're way too specific to be fulfilled intentionally. Jesus already died when some of the details were fulfilled. No ordinary man could have done this. Could the Bible have been edited later on? Well, no, because we found scrolls that were written before Jesus came, long after the original writings, and they say exactly the same thing. The other question, why was it not written in more clear language? We have many prophecies that are very, very clear. Many of Jesus' teachings are very clear. But in order to find those who want the truth, he'd often speak in parables in order for us to dig to find the real answers there. So hopefully some of that's helped us today. If it does help you, please hit like. Please share it on for those who maybe were at that event and didn't get the answers. I do plan to write out some of this. I know that was another question, was about getting this out in written format. Please subscribe to That Bible Guy. If you'd be so inclined to support the ministry so this can grow, please join up on Patreon. Thanks so much for your support. I pray we're all coming out of lockdown and starting to enjoy more freedom right now. It is very exciting, and let's get his word out there.